Hello everyone, happy you could be here. Let's dive in. Sit at My Grave, Season 3, Ego's Death, Chapter 19. Arden's body shuddered. His eyes popped open abruptly. He scanned the room, his pupils darting in a sudden frenzy. The room didn't look familiar for a moment. His face scrunched in confusion as he tried to process where he was. Everything in a rushing wave came flooding back to him unexpectedly. He was still in the hotel. It was morning now, and time to get moving. The words he said on that day to his brother were still fresh in his mind, like a tender wound. The way they treated each other, even beyond that, was still set in stone. He let it fester. And now, by his own doing, his brother was gone. He was abused, mistreated, and didn't even get to live long enough to see his own dream come true. Tears stained Arden's face. His night had been anything but restful. The fight felt so simple now, so easy to forgive and move past. It seemed so huge, so impossible back then. After the fight, they just continued finding things that separated them. And along with other influence, things just never got better. Carefully, Arden began sitting up a little. Dull light pulled in on the floor from the other side of his curtains, providing better vision along with the low lamp Arden had left on. There wasn't much he could do about the past, but Arden still felt terrible for what he contributed to his family's downfall. He felt dirty for even accepting money from Easton after he learned more of the truth. That morning after his stay with Easton, he tried to leave his place early to avoid him, but he was up. Despite being sick from last night's drinking, he was ready to drive him to the airport. He got a certain look on his face when Arden declined going with him. Regret? Acceptance? He couldn't figure it out. Regardless, Easton didn't fight him on it. He just insisted on helping pay for the trip a little instead. Arden accepted the money because he needed it. His pride wasn't going to stop him from making progress. But he didn't give Easton a proper response when he'd asked him when they would see each other again. Arden brought his hands up to his face to wipe his eyes, prepared to get out of bed now, but a sudden feeling of warm wetness stopped him. It was stickier than the tears he'd once shed. He stiffened, seeing it in a slight blur. Blood dripped from his fingertips. His pupils dilated. The rusty scent filling his nostrils was so strong, it made him feel ill. His feet shuffled under those blankets, trying to fully sit up, while his vision stayed glued to the gruesome sight on his hands. Arden shuddered again, his head buzzing at a warning. Someone was in that room with him, but he'd never heard the door open. Arden inched his head to one side, peering at the corner of his room. His brain swam with fog. He hardly wanted to blink, his brain screaming at him not to close his eyes, while goosebumps trickled up his neck. Instinct told him to run, but he couldn't get his body to cooperate. His hands were stuck up in a clawed motion in front of his body, while he sat up in bed now, feet planted on the sheet covering the mattress. His tongue licked out over his dry lips briefly. His eyes began aching from keeping them open while he wandered that corner. This was crazy. There was nothing there. Couldn't be. Was he being rational or naive? A brief moment was all it took. He blinked, and the figure seemed to appear from the shadows. It stood, staring at him, an outstretched hand toward him like an offering, just as bloody and disgusting as his own. It held out a dislodged eyeball. Torn nerves hung out, ripped from a vacant hole. Arden's body shook violently. His breath hitched. He looked up into the face by reflex. The sight shook horrors through his whole body. "Reed!" Arden screamed, just as the figure leaped at him. With a harsh thud, Arden fell to the floor. He couldn't tell if he had been pushed or fell by himself. His body was still rattling. He was terrified of looking up. He continuously ran his hands across his body in an attempt to free himself from whatever would try to pin him down. Knocks at the door sent jolts to his heart. "Mr. Adler, are you all right?" The sound of the receptionist's voice came from the other side of his room's door. It sounded a bit panicked and concerned. Arden opened his eyes. His chest was heaving up and down. Sweat dotted his forehead. His knees felt weak as he tried to stand up. He turned his body sharply, checking every corner after putting on a pair of glasses. Every time he turned his back to a wall, he got those chills, thinking something would attack him again. "Mr. Adler, let me know you're all right or I'm coming in," she spoke again. No blood on his hands, nothing in the room, just the ragged sound of him trying to catch his breath, the slight ache from falling onto the hard floor. "I'm fine. I was taking a phone call." Arthur rasped out his lie. "Oh, well, okay," she answered, still sounding unnerved, but she walked away. Arthur could hear her footsteps and voice trailing off as she pacified other customers. He'd woken up with the screams. On autopilot, Arthur began getting ready for the day. He felt the pressure of fear on him with every movement he made. He found himself still checking corners. Every noise alerted him. He'd even pulled back the curtains several times while he showered, just to check. His outer display of terror was nothing compared to the tangled, matted knot of questions in his head. Was he still dreaming when that happened? Had he been hallucinating, manifesting things from his own guilt? Had he fallen or been pushed? Josiah was there to help him, his only partner in this mess. But had it been some type of other spirit playing a trick on him? What had access to his mind like that? Was he panicking too much from all of this? Maybe it was just a strong reminder he needed to hurry. At any rate, he was wide awake now, still almost scared to even close his eyes, for fear of seeing that mutilated image again.